Hi, it's Mike. I'm back in my kitchen. Welcome. Appreciate you stopping in to visit with us today. As you can see, got my trusty do-rag on to make sure I don't get any hair in any of your food. Just got back from Aldi's, one of my favorite places to go, and I brought home a chuck roast. This chuck roast, I think I spent $14 on it. I'm going to show you today how to make roast beef, mashed potatoes, and green beans. So real simple, all the ingredients are right here. You got your potatoes. They'll just get boiled in salt water. If you can boil, you can make those. I got these green beans, super easy. So what I like to do with those is cut up a little bit of onion and put some chicken bouillon in with them. Aldi was out of their chicken bouillon, so I had to stop at another store and get some. So again, this is what you'll need for that. So you'll need a couple cans of green beans, some onion, some chicken bouillon. Again, this just takes some boiling water and a little butter and stuff, and we'll get to that later. And then this, again, easy peasy. Turn this bad boy on low. I'm gonna turn my crock pot on low. I'm gonna whip this thing open. Drop them in there. Put my lid on and let them sit in there for about 4 to 5 hours. Also got some beef bouillon here. I'll come back and show you how to make some gravy with that and how to pull the drippings out, how to trim this guy up real good so you can have yourself a nice roast beef, mashed potatoes, and green beans. Stay tuned, we'll be back in a little bit. Hi, it's Mike, I'm back. It's been about 4 hours. I got some fresh new jams on. I'm gonna go ahead and open the lid and let you have a look, see what that should look like. So that roast has been in there for about 4 hours now, and you can see there's lots of yummy juice down in there. So you have a couple choices right now, and I'll explain those to you as I go, but my choice right now is I'm gonna go ahead and drop this into a bag and save it for tomorrow. The reason I do that is I like to cut it when it's cold. It makes it a lot easier to cut. You can cut when it's warm, but it's a lot harder to cut this particular roast, or really any roast. Anything that you cut hot is gonna have a tendency to fall apart a little bit more. So not that that's a problem, but again, I kind of scheduled this for tomorrow, so I'm gonna go ahead and do it, but I will fill you in on a couple things here real quick. First of all, again, it's easier to cut when it's cold, and as you can see from this roast, there's a lot of different things happening here. So once I get it all cooled off, I'll be able to kind of break down these little segments here and get them into manageable pieces that'll cut up a lot nicer than trying to just cut it right now. You'll get a lot better slices out of it when it's cooler. The other thing I'll tell you is when meat cools, immediately it'll start sucking in air, which translates into really dry meat. So one thing that you can do is if you do decide to cut it right away, to avoid it drying out, what I like to do is put a little au jus in a pan, which I'll do tomorrow when I show you. But I'll put a little au jus in a pan, just some bouillon cubes on the heat on the stove. Slice it up, and as you slice it, don't get too far ahead of yourself. Just slice it right up and drop it into the au jus as you go, and that will keep it from drying out. And what happens is as that meat gets cut, it tends to suck in the air, as I said. It turns into dryness. By comparison, when you put it into the au jus, it sucks in the juice and gives you a really good moist meat. So that being said, what I'm gonna do to keep this from drying out overnight while it's in the refrigerator, I'm gonna drop just a couple of them in there. And then beyond that, I'll use this for gravy tomorrow. So this being all buttoned up here, I'm gonna put it in the Ziploc nice and tight. And then what I like to do, once I get that Ziploc part of the way done, I like to get the zip going, and once I'm almost all the way there, take it and squeeze it real good and get all the air out of there until that moisture kind of comes up to the edge. And from there, I'll take that bad boy and stick them in a bowl overnight, drop them in the refrigerator. Again, as it cools, it will continue to suck in that moisture. It'll give me a really nice roast tomorrow. So, again, tune in tomorrow and we will clean up the rest of this. I'll pull it out of the fridge. But again, if you want to go ahead and cut it, feel free to go ahead and cut it. Step forward and we'll pick up on that tomorrow, but don't feel like you have to wait till this cools. It is always easier to cut when it's a little bit cool. But again, letting it sit overnight will give you some really nice slices we'll talk about tomorrow. Look forward to seeing you. Hi, it's Mike. We're back. Welcome to my kitchen. Appreciate you being here today. So, I've been out on my bicycle today, in case you can't tell, put about 27.5 miles in, so I'm ready to pound some carbs and get some protein back in my body. I'm gonna pick up where we left off with the roast beef like your grandma made it. And as you can see in the crock pot, There's some little dumplings hanging around there. That stuff is no good for your gravy, so we're gonna peel that off. A lot of times you'll have a whole skin over that. Just pull it off and do like I'm doing. A little bit won't kill you, but it will make your gravy a lot less desirable. I like to throw that on some aluminum foil. I use aluminum foil a lot to waste my grease. Throw it right into the trash can, boom, you're done. So from there, I'm gonna go ahead and pull out the roast that we made. Again, this is just a simple dimple pot roast that came from Aldi. I didn't spend a ton of money on it. I'm gonna put the drippings back in there. And you don't have to spend a ton of money on it for it to be really good. Gonna move over to my knife here. A couple things you need to keep your knife sharp. If you don't have one of these bad boys, they sell at just about any hardware store. The method for keeping your knife sharp on that is to get it up over the edge like this and just pull it straight down. Now that's sharpening your knife. That will sharpen it and you'll see some residue there. You wanna wipe that off. But in between sharpenings, so that you don't wear your knife all the way down by pulling all those little metallic flakes off all the time, we're gonna get it about a 30 degree angle there. Between sharpenings, do that with this bad boy. My friend Steve gave me that for my birthday one year, and that's been a really, really nice tool to have. So now that I got a good sharp knife, I got my drippings all ready to go into my gravy. We'll be done with that in a minute. The mistake a lot of people make is they take this roast and all of a sudden they just start chopping all over it. If you look at this roast really close, you can see the grain kind of runs here, the grain runs here, and the grain runs all different directions. So what I like to do with this to make sure you get the most meat out of your roast and the least amount of waste and you're not eating all this fatty crud, I like to take it and look at the little segments. And you can see right in between here, as I cut through there, it kind of comes apart. And as you cut it, you don't want to cut the fat into it. And you'll see what I mean as I go. And then here there's another line. I like to cut that line out. And you can kind of see there's little segments. It actually kind of has a little line there everywhere that there's a decent segment. Around here, you can see there's a hole there. I'm gonna go ahead and cut that out. So the reason I do that is because all of these grains in these inexpensive roasts tend to run a lot of different directions. If you cut with the grain, it's gonna be real chewy and nasty. If you cut against the grain, you're gonna get some really, really nice pieces that you can put on the sandwiches or make into slices. And now that it's cold, it'll cut up really nice. So as you can see the end of that. That is the end of the grain. If you look at this, that is the grain running that way. So in this particular piece, I'm gonna take it and cut it like that, really thin. And as you can see, that's coming off in really nice slices with a really nice red tint in the middle. I cooked this till it was about 160 degrees in the crock pot on low for about 4 hours. You can do this when it's hot, but what I find when it's hot, not a big deal. It tends to kind of fall apart a little bit more and you can't get as thin as slices. So if you really enjoy the thin slices, wait till it cools. If you don't have the luxury of time to do that, by all means, don't be afraid to cook it and then cut it right away. So from there, I like to take and trim out all these little pieces and get all this cruddy stuff out of here that's bad for your heart. You can eat it, but if you want to die early, go ahead and eat it. If you don't, I recommend you cut it out as best you can. So this piece here, every one of these pieces you have to kind of look at and see where the grain runs. And sometimes, if I can't see exactly, I'll take and give it a little cut. And I'll be like, wow, there's still a lot of fat in there. So I'm still gonna continue to trim that fat out. Whatever you do, don't cut fat into your meat. If you start making slices and you see fat start going into it, cut that fat out and kind of start over. So it looks like here, this piece, I've gotten some really nice slices I'm gonna get out of that. So that's just kind of how you slice it. I'm gonna go ahead and slice all this and put you on hold, but in the meantime, I'll come back to that while you're waiting, and when you come back, that'll be all sliced up. In the meantime, I'm gonna start working on my gravy. So, come over to my stove here. I like to use one of these spatulas. This crock pot's been sitting up in the refrigerator for the last 24 hours or so, and it's gonna make some really nice gravy. Whoops. I'm putting a little bit of that into, yeah, that's going to my gravy there. And I'm going to continue to pull all that good stuff out of there and dump that on in. With that, I'm also going to throw in 3 bouillon cubes. And I already had about a cup and a half of water in there. So, cup and a half of water plus all the drippings. You can see about how high it is. I'm going to turn that on low and let that sit in the background while I'm cooking. In the meantime, I also have my pot of water here for my mashed potatoes. So pot of water, easy peasy. I like to dump a handful of salt in there. You can't hardly mess that up. When you salt the potatoes, when it's time to mash them, you can screw that up. But you can't hardly goof that up when you go ahead and put the salt into the water. So I'm gonna turn that on, get that bad boy going on high, and start getting ready for my mashed potatoes. And then over here, my back burner. In a big pan, put about 1.5 cups of water in that as well. So I got that burner running on low. I'm gonna put a couple more beef bouillon cubes into there and let that sit. This one's gonna become the gravy, and I'll work on that with you in a bit. This one's gonna become just an au jus or a beef bouillon mix that I'm gonna put the meat in to warm it up. So once I have that meat all sliced up, I'll just kind of layer it in there and warm it up. I've also done, when I'm kind of in a hurry, I'll just make the gravy and drop the meat in there, kind of like your grandma did. Up to you. This is kind of the more heart healthy way, if you will. If you can make beef heart healthy, this is the way that I'm doing it. And other than that, you need a couple of pans. Again, the potatoes are going here, they're boiling. I'm gonna put green beans in here. I'll come back to that in a few minutes. Give me a minute, I'll slice up that beef and we'll be right back with you. Hi, it's Mike. I got everything over there cooking and I'm in the middle of cutting this roast. I didn't want to leave something out here. As I mentioned, sometimes you'll come across a spot where you got a little more fat than you like. And as I cut into this guy and I started cutting the fat out, all of a sudden I was left with this tiny little end here. And this end, I don't know, maybe I can get some out, maybe I can't. If you start slicing him, you get these tiny little pieces. So sometimes I'll just take these little pieces here, and when they start getting real grainy like that, give them a few chops, get them down real granular. And when you have your leftovers, and when you have the pieces you just can't seem to cut, especially when you cut it hot, you'll get a lot of this. I like to take those little pieces, and sometimes just like these little pieces laid around here, and I'll toss them straight into my gravy base. So when you're done, your gravy will have just a lot of good flavor. It'll also have some little meat crystals in there. So again, if you end up with a really small piece, don't feel like you're gonna slice that thing down into nice little slices like this. You'll have tons of slices when you're done. Use the biggest pieces first, and as you get down to the smaller ones, you fill up your pan. Man, back off and drop some into your gravy. You'll thank yourself later. All right. Cool, hey, it's Mike, I'm back. Trying to keep it as basic as possible and don't want to be totally condescending to anyone, but if you don't own one of these decent potato peelers, get one. They're worth the money every time. Don't get one of those little silver handle ones, you'll just be there forever. Quick tip on peeling potatoes. Bring it towards you like that. Go all the way around. Once you get around to the other side, you have most of the stuff peeled off, then go after it. If you get these bad boys, just kind of work at them. Get them little black spots out of there. You don't want those in your potatoes, but you'll be way faster that way. And again, make sure you have a good quality potato peeler. Sorry, this potato wasn't my favorite potato I peeled today, but anyway, that's an example of how you do that. So thanks, I'm gonna cut these up in a minute. We'll throw them into the water and we'll be right back. Cool, hey, it's Mike, I'm back. All right, so while you were gone, let's take a look at what's happening on here. First of all, I got my au jus running here, or my beef bouillon and water running here for the meat. I'm gonna take the meat and bring it on over, make a transfer here. Like I said, I got some little granular pieces I'm gonna dump into my gravy pot. That's gonna be really good later. And I did my best, but you can see there's still a little fat cut in there. Try and cut that fat out as you go, otherwise you're gonna be eating some fat pieces. So now this is gonna get transferred into here. And a couple things to tell you. First of all, this meat will start to absorb up some of that juice and it'll make it really nice and tangy. But if you cut it when it's dry, I'll tell you this has been a theme I figured out a long time ago. When you cut meat when it's hot, as it cools, it sucks in air. So if you drop it into here, this will hold true for a lot of things I cook. If you take that hot meat while it's starting to cool and drop it into this au jus flavored sauce, it'll suck that moisture in. Instead of you having nasty old dry meat, you'll have nice moist meat. Whether you eat it now or save it for sandwiches later or make something really cool like mashed potato pizza that we're gonna look at later, you'll be real happy that you did that. So, got the gravy stuff cooking here. Give me a minute on that, we'll come back. In the meantime, potatoes, mashed potatoes, I'm working on them. You saw me salt up the water before, and I've cut potatoes and put them in there, but I'm gonna give you my trick on cutting potatoes. It goes like this. Just cut them like that. A lot of people cut them into all kind of complicated cubes and squares and awkward sizes. If you just cut them like that, they're all about the same size. They all cook about the same size, same time. If you use the same size potatoes, you'll be real happy. This is the pan I like to use. There's no non-stick on the bottom. If you use non-stick on that, all that crud that's gone from here will end up in your potatoes. So use a good metal tin, copper bottom Revere, something like that. My grandma bought me that for my wedding almost 33 years ago, and it's still working really good, as is my lovely wife and marriage. So that's anniversary's coming up. So there you go, there's the potatoes. If you want to swing around here real quick, one thing I'll show you in the sink, huge mistake a lot of idiots make. Peel into your sink, and when you're done, pull that out and throw it in the trash can. Do not put it down your drain unless you want to become good friends with your $100 plumber. So again, when you're done peeling the potatoes, pull all that crud out, throw it in the trash can. Day after Thanksgiving, biggest day of the year for plumbers, because all the dum-dums put that stuff down there. You will choke your sink trying to shove that stuff down. So pull it out and throw it in the trash can. All right, so let's move over to the green beans. Green beans, easy peasy, like everything I do. 2 cans, we're gonna throw those in there. I'm gonna throw in 2 chicken bouillon cubes. 2 chicken bouillon cubes going in there. You can see my potatoes are starting to boil. Make sure that they're all underwater. And for potatoes, I just make as much as will fill up the pan, man. You can never have too many mashed potatoes. Take that onion. I showed you the onion before. I peeled the onion while you weren't looking. I'm gonna take that onion. I'm gonna cut him into 4ths. I'm gonna drop him in there. Okay, so you get about half an onion in there. You got 2 bouillon cubes. I like to top that off with water. So you bring him up to the top, and you can let that boil all day, and it's just gonna keep on getting better. So, stay tuned. I'm gonna be back in a few minutes. We're gonna work on the gravy. I'm gonna let this stuff boil for a little bit, and we're gonna be eating real soon. Okay, welcome back. Here's where we're at. So, I've got the base ready for the gravy. I'm gonna jump into that in just a second. We're gonna spend a little time on that. But in the meantime, I got my roast beef sitting over here in a nice little pan with a bunch of water, juice in it. Clear lid, really nice. You can see if it's boiling or not. One thing you don't want to do with beef is boil it. You can see a little bubble there, and I'm gonna kind of pull that away because I don't really want that boiling. If that boils, that's gonna make that beef tough as a shoe. So don't do that. You just want it to kind of sit there and stay warm. Potatoes are boiling, they're almost ready. And when those are ready, you'll stick a fork in them and they'll kind of start to fall apart. They're not quite falling apart yet, so I'm gonna let them continue to boil. In the meantime, I got my beans over here cooking and boiling. Boy, you just can't do enough to that. Like I said, you cook them all day and they just keep getting better. I'm gonna turn that down a little bit and get that to a simmer. I'm gonna get my potatoes up to where they're boiling real good. And in the meantime, I'm gonna give you my secret on gravy. So, a couple ways you can do this. One's really complicated where you make a roux. That's a consistency of butter and flour that you cook in there, and you kind of brown it down until it cooks up, and then you take it and you mix it with this. I find that really hard to work with. Kind of like when I make my rub. I like my rub with white sugar because brown sugar gets all clumpy. I find the same thing with a roux, that it gets real clumpy and it's hard to turn into gravy. So this is called a roux. When I initially went to school and talked to somebody in soups and stews school and told them I did this, they were like, don't do that, it tastes all floury and you gotta cook it all day to make it taste good. Wrong. I don't think so. I've been doing this for years. I've never had anybody tell me that my stuff tasted all floury. So for that amount of gravy there, I got probably about 1.5 cups of water. I'm gonna do 3 tablespoons of flour. Cold water is the trick. Cold water, flour, mixing. Shake it up like that. Do it inside the sink so it's nice and clean. In case you didn't notice, happy wife, happy life while you were gone and I was watching all this stuff boil. I went ahead and cleaned my crock pot. I cleaned all my other pans I was using. I took all my potato skins and threw them in there. Clean as you go. You'll thank yourself when it's time to eat and you have a nice clean kitchen. Your wife will thank you even more when it's time to eat and you have a nice clean kitchen. So, you can see I got this. It looks kind of like milk. All the clumps are gone. Everything looks really good. I'm gonna go ahead and take that and toss it into my gravy. Give me a minute here, looking for this bad boy here. So I got my whisk. I'm gonna take that and turn it in there and just start dumping that in. Now, mind you, there's basically 3 tablespoons of flour in there, so that's gonna thicken up pretty good. Easy for this to get away from you. And what I mean is, you ain't watching it and you come back and there's a clump of stuff in the bottom. If that happens, too late. This is almost like the old-fashioned pudding you used to make when you were a kid with your grandma. You'd sit around and you'd have to sit there and stir it and stir it and stir it, and eventually it gets thick. You don't have to be that anal about it, but you do have to kind of keep an eye on this, because if you let this cook and you don't keep it kind of stirred, that flour will turn into a little cake in the bottom of your pan. So be careful there. As you can see, that's got a really nice color. Another thing we're going to do on top of the bouillon that already went in there and the drippings from the roast that went in there, we're going to put a little salt in there. I might say a little, you might think it's a lot. I also like to add in a little bit of onion powder. Again, all this stuff readily available. Picked this up at Aldi the other day. Add a little bit of garlic. I put that in everything. So get that stirred down in there real good and continue to keep that on a real low heat. Again, like the beef, you don't want this to really boil. If you let this boil, you're gonna have clumps and it's gonna be nasty. You can see how easy and smooth that is and textury that is. If you do make it and you're like, dang, I didn't get enough, I don't feel like I got enough stuff in there, it's too thin, do not just go ahead and add more slurry to it. Make sure if you do that you add a couple more bouillon cubes and get them dissolved and they're really good so that you don't end up with a really chalky flavored gravy. If you do end up with too much water in there and you didn't put enough flour in your mix, again, by all means, you can add more to it, but make sure that you put a couple more bouillon cubes in there to give you that beefy flavor. Again, otherwise it's going to be kind of chalky and nasty. So you can see my beef is sitting there really nice, just kind of humming along, not boiling. My potatoes, on the other hand, are boiling like I like them to. My green beans are boiling like I like them to with the onions and the chicken bouillon in there. And man, I'm telling you, we are inches away from eating. We'll be back in a few minutes to do up these potatoes and to double check the gravy, and you can watch us eat. Hey, it's Mike, I'm back. Welcome, here we go. So I got the meat cooking really good. It's just sitting there kind of being lazy in that nice warm sauce. I got my gravy, and you can see that gravy, it's really turned into a nice, smooth, awesome sauce. It's gonna go on top of all this stuff. My green beans, I finally let them come down from a boil, and they're just sitting there humming along as well. About to make my mashed potatoes. In case you didn't know or pay attention, I was cutting my mashed potatoes on my paper plate. I use a lot of stuff on my paper plate just so I don't have to wash stuff later. I don't put chinks in my counter. I don't get my cutting board dirty. Real easy way to kind of keep your kitchen clean. So from here, we're gonna go ahead and dump the potatoes right into the strainer. And you can see they're kind of falling apart. They're nice and done. They might be even a little done. I had some guests come over. Had a couple grandkids stop in, so let them potatoes go, but I don't care. At this point, you can't hardly goof up mashed potatoes unless you don't cook them well enough or you totally overcook them. You can't hardly goof them up. So one of the things I like to do right away when I get done with that is dump my salt in there so I don't forget. And again, salt to taste, it's up to you. You'll know if you have too much or too little. Over to my Friggy, and I'm gonna go ahead and get some margarine. Again, Aldi's product. Little bit of milk. Again, another Aldi's product. So I'm gonna go ahead and drop that milk down into the bottom. Let that, because what'll happen is once you get the water out of there, those potatoes will start to kind of get a little cookie on the bottom. So I like to get that milk in there right away. Hope you're enjoying the music in the background. Today we got a little blend coming in from Fish, and right now they're featuring a little Iko Iko from the Grateful Dead. Rest in peace, Jerry Garcia. Drop that butter in there. I got the salt, I got the butter, I got the milk in there. There's not much more to do. I'm gonna get my mixer out real quick. Happy grab here because I can never find these bad boys. Got my mixer, and we're gonna go to turn on the potatoes. All right, so back to the mashed potatoes. First thing I like to do once I get those all cooked up and ready, you can see the water, the milk's kind of starting to get a little warm. I like to take that mixer and just push it around down there. And then from there, start out with a low. And then once you can see that they're kind of starting to get mixed up a little bit, I'll turn on a little higher. And that looks a little sticky for me. I like my potatoes to be real creamy. So while I do have some good hot milk in there, my mother-in-law God rest her soul, she used to always say, you need to heat that milk up so your potatoes aren't lumpy, but I don't really care if they got some lumps in them, as long as those lumps are cooked and they're not chewy. So, once I get that kind of going, I'll drop a little cold milk in there. Sorry, Betty. I apologize for that. I learned a lot from Betty, but that was one of the things I didn't really see that mattered a whole lot based on how I like to eat. So, as my friend Fred used to tell me, he said, once you get those potatoes going, you just whip them up, and you can see they're kind of starting to whip. And once they kind of start getting like little valleys and grooves in them, they're really getting done. They are ready to eat. Again, I got the salt in there. I got the butter in there. They look like they're coming along really nice. From there, I got this bad boy on high. Depending on how creamy you like them, you can sit here half an hour and do this if you want. I don't think that's really necessary. You can see, like Fred said, you whip that potatoes up and they're really whippy. So from there, I'm gonna go ahead and pull that bad boy out like that. Make sure I don't get any splatter around. Set him up on the ledge. I don't see anything else to do here but eat. So thanks for joining. Hope it turns out for you like it turns out for me. All I ask with any of my recipes, please try them, make them. If you make it better than me, invite me over and I'll help you eat it. Thanks. All right, here we go. So there's what it looks like when we're done. I hope yours looks as good or better. Again, if you make it really good and you enjoy it a whole lot and you think yours is better than mine, invite me over and I'll eat it. Again, thanks for being here. If you like the stuff you're seeing, don't forget to subscribe to Mike's Meals at either Facebook or on YouTube. I'd like to thank my family for letting me do this. Thank Ben, the cameraman back there. Thank Modern Brewing for putting Centropolis together that I'm enjoying with my meal. And let me know if you have any requests, if there's anything you'd like to see me make. If you've been here before and you've enjoyed something, I'd be happy to share it with you. If you want me to figure something out that you don't know, I'd be happy to do that too. So, more to come. Thanks, bye.